Associates.
Welcome to Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman, a leading expert in professional coaching, clinical hypnosis, and energy clearing. Lois is an award-winning author of Chronicles of Hope. She has decades of experience in advanced hypnosis techniques, has conducted highly effective success coaching programs that have helped clients discover ways to achieve success, empower themselves, their families, as well as holistic practitioners to expand their practices. Get ready to be empowered with your host, Lois Herman.
And good morning. Welcome to Inspiring Hope. I am your host, Lois Herman, and I hope to inspire you with positive messages and celebrate everyday people who are making a difference in our world. When we focus our thoughts and energies on what we love to do, we create powerful shifts that cause us to be more positive and more peaceful. As we lift our energy, we empower everyone around us. If we each do what we can to make small shifts in awareness, from kindness to healthy habits and simple happiness, we create ripples of hope. Join us as catalysts for positive change for our families, our communities, and our world at large. I hope you are inspired by today's show. And today we are celebrating snow here in New England. We had a blanket of probably 6 inches or so at our house, and it is so pretty. Have you ever gone outside and listened to the snow? It is so silent. The birds are quiet. Everything is quiet. You know, we sit inside and we sit by the fire maybe and we watch the snow fall, and it is so peaceful. It's like Mother Nature just lays a blanket of white over us and says, shh, be still, be quiet. Go within. Allow yourself to celebrate the silence, even if it's for a moment, because before too long, what do you hear? The scraping of shovels, the snow plows, the snow blowers are out, and everybody's back in their frenzy. In New England, I have been amazed by how people they adapt to snow. When it comes, it's just like, it is what it is. We got here. I know Andrew, who is going to be on in a couple weeks. He lives a little bit further on the seacoast up toward Maine, and he got a little bit more snow than we did. So he's going to take a little bit of a breather today, and we have another very special guest who rallied at the last minute. So, you know, we just wait till the snow plows clear the roads, and we move on. Where I was raised, part of my life in Tennessee, when it snowed, the whole city was completely incapacitated. And then when I moved to New Hampshire, it was amazing to me. I remember the first time driving down the highway, and there were snow plows, like 5 of them in tandem, just plowing through the interstate, and I'm like riding in their wake going, this is so cool. The people in New England just know how to deal with the snow. We stay inside till it's done, then we just go out. A lot of people really enjoy the snow. They snowshoe or they ski or just enjoy being out sledding. And when was the last time you made a snowman? When I'm driving through after the snow and I look around and I see the snowmen and the snow people, it just tickles my heart, because I know some family, some child, whether it's an old child or a young child, has had an opportunity to go out and actually play in the snow and make a snowman. And it just brings joy to my heart. So think of the silly little things that bring joy to your heart, because that's what this show is all about. You are listening to WSMN 1590, Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman. And my intention is to bring little doses of hope to people who are listening on a regular basis. So yes, we're blanketed by a lovely blanket of snow, and we also have time now to go with and to do some quiet things, maybe to organize the clutter, maybe to get rid of things, and to inspire ourselves to follow through on the commitments that we've made, our intentions. How many of you are still staying with the intention, your goal that you set for the new year? They say that by February, a large percentage of people are off their intention. Well, you know what? If you want to exercise, maybe do it 10 minutes a day. If you want to eat healthy, maybe you should think about going to the store when you've already eaten so that you're not hungry, So as you're shopping for the Hummers, not the Beckoners. The Beckoners are those foods that call to you when you're hungry. But if you shop when you're already full, then you're going to be making healthier choices. You're going to be looking for the Hummers, the things that are good for your body. So take some time to make good on the commitment to yourself, to follow up on the intention to make your life better in some way. And I want to share a good news story that my husband shared with me that he saw. This gentleman bought a couch at the Habitat Restore. Okay, now I just have to say that's one of my favorite stores on the planet. Anyway, he brought it home. It was for a man cave he was making, and it was lumpy. And he was like, maybe I have to take it back. I don't know. But his daughter came in and unzipped the cushions on the couch, and lo and behold, there was $43,000 of loose bills just squirreled into the couch. And he's like, oh my goodness, what do I do with all this lumpy money? So he did the right thing. He goes back to the store and says, I can't keep this. That's not in my integrity. So he returns the money to the store, and he says, can you tell me who the owner is? So they contacted the owner, the woman who donated it. The couch was her grandfather's. She inherited it, and she, as a young woman, had no place for it. So just weeks after he died, she donated the couch to the Habitat store, and they gave her the money back. Isn't that just one of those uplifting good news stories? And she was delighted and overjoyed, and she could definitely have used that money. But hey, next time you find lumps in your couch, don't think that it's a spring. It just might be, and you're sitting on some money there. And I tell you what, if you ever are in need of some extra furniture or household goods or whatever, go there. It's a great store. I have to say that I have probably outfitted my office, my professional office, with many things from the Restore, and they're beautiful. I have this beautiful Broyhill cabinet that I use for my printer and things. It probably retailed at well over $1,000. I got it for $75. Seriously, go there if you're looking to refresh. You can find great treasures that somebody has donated. So, what gives you joy? I want to celebrate another person before I bring my favorite friend here on. Tomorrow is this very special woman's 89th birthday. And this woman, I've kind of known all of my life. This is my mother. She is in rehab right now. She fractured her back again after a fall. She's dealt with bad back problems for years. This woman is one of the strongest women that I know. A couple years ago, she fell, fractured her arm, her humerus, and in the recovery developed clot, which turned into a stroke. Now, this is a woman who has always been a seamstress, an avid quilter. She lost complete use of the right side of her body, of her right hand. But for her therapy, this happened in March time frame. By Christmas time, she had quilted me a Christmas quilt. So every time I pull that quilt out, I look at that and I see her effort, that she went through to make that quilt. That was her therapy. So it's doing those things with your hands, getting yourself, whether it's puzzles, crocheting, do things that gives you joy, that you can create. And in the process, it helps mind, body, and spirit. And it will always touch my heart when I see this quilt that she made for me as part of her therapeutic recovery. So think of all of those special people that are in your life, and I just want to give a shout out to happy birthday to my mother. So you are listening to WSMN 1590, and I'm Lois Herman. This is Inspiring Hope, where we look to bring spotlights on the people, the everyday people who are doing amazing things in our world. And I happen to have a wonderfully dear friend in my sitting right here with me today. And Melinda Tourangeau, actually, I contacted her last night. I guess it was around 9 o'clock because we found out that Andrew was going to be snowed in. And he was a little nervous about making that drive or committing to the drive. she was going to be on next week, and by golly, she said yes. So this is the type of person who just says yes to to commitments, to following through, to being here. And I just want to say, welcome, Melinda, to the show.
How nice. Thank you, Lois.
You're so welcome. So tell us a little bit about you.
Melinda Tourangeau. Well, that is my name, and it is French-Canadian for your listeners, if they're wondering. My husband's family, he has successfully traced back over 400 years to French Canada and France itself.
Wow.
And I've been a resident of southern New Hampshire for the better part of 25 years. And my husband and I own a 2-person company, Warrior Support Solutions, and we provide technical expertise to the Department of Defense.
Wow.
I think it's funny because Tourangeau is such an unusual name here in America, but apparently it's as common as Smith in Canada.
Yes.
And so, but there are 2 Steve Tourangeaus right here in Nashua, and sometimes my husband and this doctor get confused for one another when we go different places. I think that's a little bit amusing.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting. I went to Poland years ago. My maiden name is Klemaszewski. And again, that's a mouthful here. But over there, it is like Smith. So it's a very common name in Poland. So, where we have different familiarity with names. But I love the way that the Tourangeau, it's a very pretty.
It is, and we
name.
pronounce it American style, but of course in French it's Tourangeau.
Oh, how pretty.
Yes, and but for those of us listening here in America, to remember it, an easy phonetic hint is banjo.
Banjo.
Right.
Yeah. So you have a myriad of skills and talents, and I know you in a couple of different venues, but you're an engineer.
I am.
By training. And you also are an avid swimmer.
I do enjoy that very much. I think I was a mermaid in a past life. Yes.
And you're also a ballroom dancer now.
I am.
And I see you on the floor just smiling. You are just delighted to be dancing.
That's true. There's a bit of a story there.
Yes, go for it.
I guess we can go there next. My mother was a circus performer, Ringling Brothers.
Really?
Really, truly. I know it's very unusual. A lot of people have a similar response when I tell them. And my father was both a tennis pro, club tennis pro, and an entertainment tycoon, and that's how they met.
I see.
My father went to Madison Square Garden and looked out over at my mother on an elephant and said, "I'm going to marry that woman." And he did. And my mother, after she had the 4 of us, she still didn't want to go back to the circus yet. So she opened a ballet and gymnastics studio in New York City.
Wow.
So it seems like I've been dancing since I was old enough to walk, which is probably true.
Yeah.
And she really, over the years, sought out all of the best training for us to just indulge in every kind of musical expression that there could be, dance. And I learned to play the piano and sing. So I've been performing since a very young age. Well, ballroom dancing was something I had not tried but dreamt about, wondered about, and then a year ago, January 3rd,
Yep.
I went to a local studio, Paper Moon.
Yes.
Hope it's okay to say that.
Oh,
Wonderful
yeah.
studio.
With Maria and Ray, they're wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yes.
They're in Merrimack, New Hampshire, and they just opened their arms to me, and I fulfilled another dream, learning how to ballroom dance. So it's been a year.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. I consider dance is it's somewhat of a meditation, because
Certainly.
when you are dancing, you can't be thinking about your day-to-day problems. You have to be focused on the partner you're dancing with. You have to be completely present in the now. And so you're moving your body, you're focused on that moment in time. So it's a mind, body, spirit experience. It really is.
It really is, and I think that's why a lot of people flock to it.
Yes.
And you just got finished saying that your mother was able to rehabilitate through expression through her hands, and we definitely need to find ways, countless ways, to get out of our own minds. They have literally taken us over. So it's very, very important that we each as individuals discover what it is that we love, and that takes us out of our own minds and our thoughts and our concerns. And that can either be through motion, through active motion through our bodies, or through activity, doing something, or we can teach ourselves what's called typically meditative stillness. And that's a harder thing to do. So if you're not accustomed, it's definitely better to start out by finding things you can do while getting out of your mind, and then move on to meditation.
Absolutely.
Stillness.
Even going for a walk.
Yes.
You experience the stillness, and stepping outside in the middle of the snow, as I was doing this morning early, listening to the snow fall, and it's just like, it's silent.
Well, as I shared with you on the ride over, the philosopher Pascal, 17th century Pascal, he said that all the ills of humanity can be attributed to one's inability to sit still for any length of time alone in a room. And he spoke those words over 300 years ago, and I believe they are still true today. And yet we are constantly seduced and bombarded by all of this amazing technology, which is doing wonderful things to improve our lives, but it is ultimately putting us more inside our heads than ever, and we are really losing touch with the human connection, quite frankly. So it was a very profound statement that was made over 300 years ago and still holds true today.
And especially true today, because I believe, we often hear about addictions, drug addictions, alcohol addictions, but social media is our new trendy addiction. People cannot put down their phone, and they need to. And look around, look into the eyes of someone around you, really connect with someone instead of being stuck in that addictive, drawn in technology. Like you said, technology is a wonderful tool, but we need to use it and not allow it to use us.
Oh, indeed. But I think it's very challenging for people who consider themselves normal to justify using the phone and picking up the phone and being on the phone constantly. So we don't yet have an AA for the phone, but I think it's definitely coming, or at least warranted. We simply cannot allow these devices to rule our lives. We will really lose our human connection.
And you're actually speaking about something along that line at a conference coming up. Is that true?
That is indeed true. In fact, let's speak about that now. I've been blessed with an opportunity to speak about the perils of what I call overcommitment, which is that because we have our phones in our hands at all times, we now have access to a calendar, and in every case, it's a digital calendar. And there seems to be some type of predilection for backing up appointments one after another without giving due consideration to the travel time involved or the mental preparation that would be required to go from one type of appointment to another. And then there's this voice in the back of the head that says, oh, I have my phone with me, I'll just text somebody if I'm running late. These are not good habits and patterns for demonstrating to people who we're meeting with that we care about them, we have consideration of their time, we respect them. And if we arrive at an appointment at 3 p.m. and the appointment's at 3 p.m. and we're parking the car, then you're late. Mm-hmm. You really needed to arrive 5 to 10 minutes beforehand and sit in stillness. Sit and contemplate what it is you want to accomplish in this next meeting. And if you are driving yourself because your phone and, I can get there in 12 minutes and not really preparing for that human connection, you really are losing an incredible opportunity for the universe to work through you and your actions and the other person and really make something happen. And I'm terribly concerned, quite frankly. I
Yes.
really am. And so I'm going to be speaking about that. In fact, the name of the talk is Overcommitment,
Right.
the Great Illusion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the fact that in addition to simply being seduced by our devices and possibly addicted to them, there's also this mistaken belief that being busy and looking busy is somehow escalates you to more importance. That absolutely cannot ultimately be true, and it's certainly not the case. And in fact, if you run late to every appointment and then say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm late," and try to look important, you really actually look like you're out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And so there needs to be some consideration given to how you're
Absolutely.
conducting your daily life. So I'm going to be running a workshop on
Yes.
that, and I'm thrilled to have been given the chance.
And this is at a small business conference, so I thought that was fascinating. As a small business owner, I'm very curious about the conference itself. It's in Boston.
Yeah.
When is it?
Yes, so that's a great question, too. It's called Interrise 2020. The information for it can be accessed at interrise2020.org. It will be held March 9th, 10th, and 11th, 2020 in Boston, Massachusetts at the Heinz Convention Center. And I'm calling it a small business unification event. Interrise started a business several years ago when they recognized that many small business owners like yourself, Lois, were in need of resources that could easily be shared among small businesses to
Sure.
save money, save time. Also, a lot of small business owners really never got an MBA, so they went into it kind of blindsided by all of the responsibilities of running a business. So Interrise organized an organization around leveraging resources among small business owners. And I believe the organizer said this is their 4th year
Nice.
doing the conference. So it is 3 days. That's a pretty big deal.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
I know I do a lot of coaching for small business owners, and what happens is people have a skill, an avocation, a passion that ends up turning into a business. So they're really good at what they do and what they love. However, they don't necessarily know how to do QuickBooks or how to send invoices. So they get into trouble because there's these other pieces that are needed to run a business effectively that the person who has decided to start a business doesn't have those skills. So this sounds like a very fascinating organization. And you are listening to WSMN 1590. Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman. And I'm Lois Herman, and I'm here with Melinda Tourangeau, and we are talking about how to keep yourself inspired, especially as a small business owner. And Melinda, you've been through some health crisis. You've had a journey. We all have a journey. You went through some pretty challenging health issues some years ago. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I will, certainly. So 25 years ago, in my youth and arrogance and athletic ability, I went down a ski mountain, Gunstock, for those of you avid skiers in the area, and my ski tip got caught in the snow, and I completely blew out my left knee.
Oh, my.
And I needed 4 surgeries to repair the damage, and then I also herniated L3-4 as a consequence of hobbling around on crutches after all of those surgeries. And I think that the universe often gives us what we need to awaken when we
Right.
need it. And the countless hours I spent convalescing gave me pause, finally. I mean, I was left lane, 5th gear, 100 miles an hour my whole life up to that point. And there I was, lying in bed. And I began to contemplate basically the order of the universe and all that had come before, and all of my family challenges and social nuances that I just could not seem to get right. In my professional life, it seemed like I was stepping over myself, even though I was quite a bright engineer, but I just socially could not adapt and get along very well. And so it started a journey of spiritual awakening.
Wow.
A strong one.
And you mentioned several different books that you read. I can only imagine you started reading while you're convalescing.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. And we didn't have podcasts back then.
Yeah.
If one recalls those days.
Yeah.
So one of the first books I read was a very small book called Patience Pays Off, because I found that as I interacted with people, I became very impatient, and then I became belligerent and just really not an easy person to work with. And I think what the convalescing did and the slowing down did gave me some space to raise my awareness. You spoke about that earlier, Lois, and it certainly did for me. And then as I was rehabilitating, I discovered yoga.
Nice.
And of course, yoga means very different things to different people, but I think the early creators of it, which goes back thousands of years now, intended for us to be able to move our bodies while we maintain inner body awareness. And this is key, Lois, because we are in a community. We are civilians working together in a social community, so we have to be doing all the time. But that certainly doesn't mean we need to lose connection with our inner body, because the connection with our inner body is the bridge to the source.
Nice. So
my yoga at first was all about, I better do it the best and stretch the longest and look best in class and da-da-da. My ego was still very much in play back then. This is 25 years ago, literally. February of 95 was when I had the accident. But over these years, the universe continues to give you what you want to awaken or what you need to awaken. So here I am today, asked to be on your show. I think ultimately that's an expression of this long journey I've been on, which certainly is not over. And so I'm delighted to be having a chance to share some of this with people who are listening, because I was just an ordinary person. And frankly, even though I came from probably more progressive roots, a circus performer and a tennis pro, really our family challenges were very similar to most. And so I had a lot to overcome.
Yes, you did.
And I'd like to take a moment to just inspire everyone listening that if you feel like your life is too normal or you're not being called for something great, you couldn't be further from the truth. Everyone, the carpenter, Jesus himself, everyone is called to greatness. It just depends how you want to approach it.
Absolutely, each in our own way. We're all different snowflakes. We're all different flowers. We all have our own vibrational energy that we bring to this fabric of humanity. So as we each do what we're called to do, we feel good, we feel joy, we awaken that mission, that purpose. And that's part of why I'm doing this show, because I kept hearing I would turn off the news. I did not want to hear all the negative, because I know so many amazing people like you. And when I would turn on the news, it was all negative, and so I would complain. Where's the positive? So instead of just complaining, take an action. So my thought was, okay, I'm going to start a good news show and just highlight all the good that's out there. And you are listening to WSMN 1590. I'm Lois Herman, and you can actually find me at loisherman with 2 N's.com. And they also have a whole separate business surrounding the book that I wrote, chroniclesofhope.net. You can find, go to the website. It has all of the Twitter, Facebook, all those other places. We've just started a YouTube channel. So please, what is it called? Like the YouTube channel or follow, whatever. I'm still getting... Subscribe. Thank you, Allison. Subscribe. I still am learning all the different jargon. And this YouTube channel will have all of these videos from the show on there. It also has all of the shows from the Inspiring Hope community. Our Chronicles of Hope has a community that meets, and then we have an actual dialogue, a discussion twice a month. We meet via Zoom and share insights on how we can inspire each other to make a difference.
I would love to take a moment to compliment you on that accomplishment, Lois. and how well written it is. And truly, you were called for that purpose. And as difficult as it may have been, I know there were countless hours, and also channeling requires a great deal of energy, but I think the messages you brought were profoundly relevant to today's challenges, and I really want to thank you humbly and compliment you for your effort on that.
Thank you so much, but it is their messages.
True.
I am simply the messenger.
True.
And yet it has taken a lot of time, and I am blessed to have some amazing people who have shown up to help me carry this message. We're working now on book 2, and we were just talking because I know you do. I've been to your Seder meal. I may didn't say it correctly, but I would like you to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I'm working on the chapter for book 2 now, the Jesus chapter, where he came through. Now, here, my muses, we've talked about muses before. My muses have me up every night at 3:00 to write. This has been going on for probably 6 weeks now. When I said I'm going to start on book 2 now, I am up writing for 2 hours every single night, and we're into the third session, or chapter 3. So the Jesus session was extremely humbling and empowering at the same time, where the message that he brought to us is, what happened to my simple message? My message was, do unto others. How can people be fighting? How can people be killing in my name? When will people learn to live together? When will people honor and respect each other? You are all one. And as I listened to and had to write the transcribe and write my thoughts on this, it really hit home to me how we need to do more of this. Have that FaceTime. Have time to celebrate and appreciate one another. So thank you. And you had, you come from Jewish background, correct? You were raised Jewish, and then you had a transformation yourself.
I did in 2000, and I explored Christianity through the Catholic Church. And it's been a brilliant, wonderful journey getting to know Jesus. And he truly came with an important message that has gotten clouded. I think that it might be helpful to just talk for a couple minutes about why that is, at least my opinion. And so basically, what happens when we're born is we are pure, most likely. Maybe 1 in a million are born with some kind of curse or something, but for the most part, we are born pure. And then with each painful event in our lives, we are not taught how to handle that energy. And it gets trapped in us and becomes a sheath or a veil that to our true selves. And guess what? That energy builds up and builds up and builds up. And if we have a difficult youth, a difficult upbringing, a difficult family experience, and you haven't learned how to channel that energy back out of you, this veil gets very, very thick. And then as we mature, our thoughts get ingrained with this trapped energy. And so basically, we are unable to see the world purely as we were as children.
Exactly.
Right. And so we need to be taught that this is happening so that we can learn to eschew this energy, because bad stuff happens.
Yes.
Please.
And our parents did not know either. So blaming is not the name of the game.
No.
Because they didn't know. They didn't know what we are now learning as we evolve. And yes, we need to be more like the children. When you watch a child who is not stuck in technology, playing, little children, we just went through Christmas and other holidays, when they're more enamored with the bow and the box. oftentimes than what's in the box, because it's the joy, and we need to get back to be like that innocent child. We need to reclaim the innocence to shift our perspective to be more like the child and less in our mind. There are so many people who are so focused on get ahead, get more, and that is another piece that affects our physical, mental, and emotional energies, and it affects how we relate to others.
It does indeed, and the 7 deadly sins are there for a reason. We as a human race, as a humanity, have a frightening predilection toward more,
and less is more. And we need to get back to simplicity.
Yeah, reckless abandon is kind of my favorite expression.
Well, I like to, I do some coaching for clearing clutter. And my thought is, if you have things in your home or your clothes that you want to wear, and I also, I'm going to segue into Melinda's one of my inspirations. She always dresses so colorfully. She's got on all these bright colors, and it's wonderful. And if you pick a piece of clothing or an article up and it doesn't give you joy, give it to someone who might enjoy it. But if it still brings you joyful memories, hold on to it and cherish it. And I want to talk just briefly. I was raised Catholic, and one of the messages that has come through so strongly in the teachings that I have been honored to deliver is that all religions are basically saying the same thing. They're just different languages. So I had the honor of observing or being a part of a Seder meal that you host and you teach for the Catholic Church. And as I was sitting there watching you go through, I have never been to a Seder before, and I'm thinking, holy smokes. This is the Catholic Mass. The prayers are the same. Everything is almost identical. And in talking with you, you said, yeah, well, that was Passover. The Mass is based on Jesus' Last Supper, which was a Passover Seder meal. So tell us a little bit about that. It was fascinating to me.
Was it? Thank you. I'm delighted. Well, I think the good news story here is I think this is my 19th year doing it.
Wow.
And it's an incredible piece of my conversion to Christ and finding the love of Christ. So I brought all of that Jewish upbringing, that education that I had, to the Seder meal. And as I started attending Mass, I realized that there were all those similarities. So I made an offer to my then pastor. Well, would you like to hold a Seder meal? And I'll do it completely in Hebrew, and I'll sing all the songs as Christ would have sung them at the Last Supper, and we'll have a Lamb Supper, and people will be introduced to the origins of the Eucharist.
Absolutely.
And the wine and the body and blood of Christ. Basically, they will understand the prayers that were said, why they were said, why Christ chose that vehicle, the Passover Seder meal, to inaugurate his salvation for all of us. And I'll tell you what, Lois, that thing took off like I don't know if Father Gary had a lot to do with it. He was my pastor at the time at St. Catherine's. He's now at Corpus Christi Parish in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and still asking me year after year to celebrate this Seder meal. And we do have to limit it to 80 people. So for listeners out there who want tickets, you'll need to contact Father Gary and ask him for an early reservation. But it sells out so fast. And I think one of the reasons... Certainly.
That's all right. Sorry to interrupt. I wanted just to say, I think it's so good because of her delivery and the teaching and how you have it. You just really engage people, and it's like, wow, we were right there. We truly were right there. So you do a beautiful job. And I want to just segue for the listeners to say, you are listening to WSMN 1590. This is the Inspiring Hope Show with Lois Herman, and we're speaking with Melinda Tourangeau. I've had several people comment that I needed to remind people of who you're listening to more frequently, so I'm attempting to do that. So I'm sorry, you were saying about what you thought about the Seder meal.
Yes, just that it's success. It's so funny how So I grew up a performer, but my father convinced me to become an engineer, and my mother didn't want me to be a performer. It's actually a very brutal lifestyle. I mean, you have to perform sick and broken bones, and you don't get paid very much. It can be very rewarding, but it not nearly as lucrative as engineering. And so I became an engineer, but there's always been this latent desire to be in front of a crowd and to sing and to perform. And while certainly my getting up in front of 80 people to demonstrate the Seder meal isn't a performance in the classic sense, I think that whatever it is the universe gave me as a child that I cultivated and fostered as a child, I'm now bringing to this experience. And Lois, I've had people come up to me, I mean, people in their 80s who have been celebrating Mass every day of their lives, and they are in tears. Mm-hmm. And they almost don't understand what's happened to them, mm-hmm. that now they finally understand why Christ chose the Passover Seder miracle as a vehicle, and why all of the ritual in the Mass, why that's there, and
right.
the prayers are the same in Hebrew.
Exactly.
And that really overwhelmed me. I mean, I started doing it, but then when people would come up in tears, that I almost couldn't handle because I didn't feel worthy. And
the thing is it shows the similarity instead of, oh, these are different. No, it's just different customs have gone down different paths. It's kind of like language has evolved down different paths. If you speak with someone who's from Great Britain versus someone who's from Australia versus the United States, it's all the same language. It's just adapted a little bit differently based on evolution.
Right.
But to me, it caused me to understand how similar the religions are, those belief systems are. So why are we fighting? And that was Jesus' whole message, was stop the fighting, really come together. And we are listening to Melinda Tourangeau. Thank you for sharing. And for those of you who would like to come to her Seder meal where she teaches, where you can experience this. Maybe she's going to have more than one, or they're going to have a bigger venue for you. It's at Corpus Christi Parish in Portsmouth, correct?
Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So
yes.
check that out.
Yeah, March 28th, 2020.
So you also talked about your journey. One of the people who influenced you tremendously was Eckhart.
Right.
On your journey. You mentioned Wayne Dyer, and I definitely have a connection, or had a connection with Wayne Dyer. I have the honor of having him kiss me on the cheek once, and that I will remember that always. No, I studied him. I studied his work. I was so drawn by his power of intention, where you put your focus. That is the intention. Just like if you're going to set goals for the year, don't call it a goal, because those are more. They're not as concrete as an intention. An intention, this is where I'm going to put my mind, and that has power. So I studied Wayne Dyer, also Eckhart Tolle. So tell us about your journey with these authors.
Oh, thank you so much. So let's see. So in addition to Christ, of course, whose teachings and his expressions from the Bible still hold true today, one of the ones I repeat very often is, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Mm-hmm. But after my parents passed away in 2001 and 2005, respectively, this voice in my head started asking me questions about the order of the universe that I really didn't allow myself to answer until after their voices were quieted. And finally, by 2011, I expressed these new thoughts to my craniosacral therapist, and she suggested I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And my first read through the book was a little bit, you've got to be kidding me. But ultimately, it ended up being a kernel for spiritual awakening that took years, by the way. It took years. Mm-hmm. So for those of you out there who are wondering why hasn't anything happened yet, you really must just make a commitment to the journey, not the destination, because spiritual awakening will happen when the universe is ready for you to do it. It does help to have faith, and I would just add that the more you educate yourself with all of these new things that are out there now, more spiritual teachers, books and things, the more you educate yourself, the more you can probably fortify your efforts to spiritually awaken. But anyway, getting back to Eckhart Tolle, I was so inspired by the new thinking and the calmness that was overcoming me. after having read his book, and then I signed up for his website, EckhartTolleNow.com. 3 years later, I went to my first seminar with him at the beautiful Omega Institute in upstate New York, Rhinebeck, New York. And being face to face with him in an arena with 800 people who were sharing similar energy was very powerful indeed. And I was given the privilege to ask him a question, and I did. And I went away from that just completely motivated to continue the journey, which, by the way, Lois, everyone should know, was most certainly 3 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Absolutely.
Because I had to learn to laugh at myself. Yeah, because
we are human.
We are.
And we're blazing new paths. And I spoke last week about neural pathways. And we're used to going a certain way. It's like blazing, like walking down that path through the woods. It doesn't take us where we want to go, but it's comfortable. That's our familiar path. It takes effort to blaze a new path where you choose to go. It's the same thing with the neural pathways in your mind. You get started down one path, and then, no, it's just easier to go over here. It's familiar. And then you have to redirect and redirect and redirect again before it finally starts to take root. And then still we go sideways. It's part of that human experience. I wish we could say that, yes, we are evolved, but we are evolving as we go on this journey.
For sure, Lois. And so that's why practitioners like yourself and a lot of others at the New Hampshire Health and Wellness Center are helping people now stay on track, stay focused, because our minds, that trapped energy I spoke about earlier, it will yank us off our best intentions.
Absolutely.
And we'll wake up the next morning and say, what the heck? That is not what I meant to do. I told myself 1,000,000 times, and yet you will still do it. So there are a lot more resources out there now to help us. Complementary resources. I mean, podcasts and things like that. You just want to avoid people who are putting out the wrong messages, of course. But
well, that brings me to surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yes.
And listening to shows like this, who have these amazing people, who have their stories, who are willing to share their stories that are inspiring to so many.
Well, I certainly hope so. My common roots would certainly indicate that my story is worthy of being told. I know I'm in the right place right now doing this show with you today because part of me feels not worthy, but part of me knows it's time to start sharing the victories that I've had and just let your readers know that it's challenging, but it is absolutely the most rewarding thing you can do for yourself is to stay committed to raising awareness of your thought patterns and overcoming habits that are not serving you and reminding yourself what's important, which is ultimately the human connection. I mean, you can go live and be a hermit. Otherwise, we really do all need to get along.
It's the human connection, and it's also the connection with universal energy, whatever you want to call that, be it God, be it Jesus, be it divine source, be it great spirit, asking for assistance from the divine. It is amazing. I was having kind of a moment yesterday. We all have them. And in the middle of this, like you were saying, this is not me. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I acting this way? This is I don't choose to be this way. I paused a moment. And I asked for some divine guidance to come through. Take whatever this is that's causing me disturbance, please lift it and give me more inspired thoughts. And my energy within moments shifted. We have to ask. They cannot interfere with our free will. They have told us this time and time again because we are making our choices. But the moment we ask, they will be there to help us, no matter it could be a relative, your favorite grandmother who was always there. She's still there. I say this often. It's like she's just moved to Alaska. She's in a different state. But if you call on her, just Granny or whatever you called her, hold me, give me some, let me feel good. She'll be there. It doesn't have to be a specific religious prayer. Prayer to me is heartfelt communication in a very simple way.
It is.
You know, a child out in the woods playing with fairies. Just watch the
reckless
children.
abandon.
There you go, reckless abandon. Get out of that has to be a certain way because
right.
Who says?
Who says?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I would only add that, Lois, our ego is determined to sideline our best intentions, and so as long as you're aware of that,
yes,
that was one of the catalysts for me for my spiritual awakening, was finally learning the role that these trapped energies were playing in my life. And if I could just create enough space between my ego taking over my brain and my true self, those messages started to emerge. But I must again remind everyone listening that it could take years, and don't get discouraged.
Yeah, just keep on going and surround yourself with people of like mind. Yeah. And those that are discouraging to you, you can acknowledge them, but they're not speaking your truth. Know your truth in your heart.
Right.
And be your truth. Be your authentic self.
Right. And I would also mention, this is a very important thing about it, is that our families, because we're viscerally connected to them almost, we just shared everything together, bathrooms and sickness and meals. And they're going to be our most challenging to create space for. So if you have a family member who is really abusing you, you certainly need to take the time to, once you awaken, it may be okay to step away for just a little while.
Yep. And some people it needs to be a long while, because family is not always genetic.
Right.
So I have friends that I'm so close with that I consider my soul sisters and soul brothers, and I can share deep feelings with, and it's wonderful.
Our dearest friend gave me a book last Christmas, Friends Are the Family We Choose.
Exactly, that's it. So I hope all of you who are listening are our friends. You are the family that we're choosing to connect with, to inspire. And you are listening to WSMN 1590. I am Lois Herman. The show is called Inspiring Hope, and every week my intention is to shine a spotlight on someone who I have come to know or who I've been introduced to, who is doing things in their life to help others, and they have an inspiring story. There's so much good around us. There's so much more good around us than there is negative, and we need to focus on the good because, as I've said before, what you focus on, what you water in your garden grows. So water those friends, those positive thoughts, those experiences that give you joy. And do you have a quote, a special quote that you like to say?
I do.
Yes, and what would that be?
There are two. One is by an author named Maria Valtorta, and she said, "It is possible to tell the truth in a charitable way." So that oftentimes helps me when I have a difficult message to deliver. And then the other one is, "The private soldier is a poor judge of the fortunes of a great battle." So
interesting.
Yes, that one I can't remember who said it.
That's okay.
Ange, I believe, or Inge, I-N-G-E. But nevertheless, if you're frustrated with a situation, just remember that you may not have all of the details.
The whole picture.
Yes.
And you said something to me the other day, too. You said you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But the truth is, you can only lead a horse to water if they want to go there.
Yes.
So thank you all for being here with Melinda Tourangeau, and I am Lois Herman. You can find us at loisherman.com or chroniclesofhope.net. I look forward to speaking with you next week. Meanwhile, look up, stay positive, and be the light in someone's day.